Attention New York City listeners, I'm excited to share 2 upcoming live This Is Taste tapings that I think you're going to like, taking place at Rizzoli Bookstore in Manhattan's Flatiron District. On April 8th, I will be joined by Barbara Costello, better known through her Brunch with Babs social accounts. We will be talking about her brand new cookbook, Cooking with Babs. And on May 5th, I will be joined by photographer and journalist Craig Maude for a reading and conversation about his debut memoir, Things Become Other Things. I love this book so much and welcome you all in to hear his story about walking around Japan and so much more. Tickets are available at the Rizzoli website, rizzolibookstore.com. I hope to see you there. Eric Kim, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're doing a fun thing right now. We're doing something new. We're live on YouTube, or not live, but you know what I mean. We're on YouTube.
Live to tape.
Or listening to the podcast, but I have the link to our YouTube page. You should subscribe. We'll be doing this with some frequency. I hope you come back.
Yeah, I'd love to.
It's called Food Writers Talking About Food Writing.
Nice.
It's, I wanted to do something a little different for our YouTube. I didn't want to just do like live episodes of our podcast because, listen, that's an intimate. Like we turn the lights down.
Yeah, we do.
In the podcast. Like we don't really like to think about visuals with the podcast. It's an audio format, but this is not.
Yeah, getting ready this morning, I was like popping a zit, and I was like, there's no video today, and then I realized, oh, there is video.
There's video today. Do you like being on video at the Times?
I do. I think I don't think about it that much because the team is so good. I just go and do the thing, and it happens. They record it. Yeah, it's pretty. I think I'm pretty lax about it. Maybe
that's why you're good.
Video is normal.
Yeah,
for me. Yeah,
I mean that's why you're good because you just keep it. Like yourself. You're not.
Yeah, I think if I paid attention to it, I would just absolutely crumble. So I try to
drive you batty.
Ignore it. Yeah.
Well, the concept of this show is food writers talking about food writing, and I just wanted to go over on this episode, some of our favorite stories from the week, some thoughts about food writing, some thoughts about eating. Man, let's start there. As we ask on the show, typically, where have you been going out recently? What's a memorable restaurant meal that you had?
Ooh, it was my partner's birthday recently, so our birthday meal for both of us is a place called Ulali. And it's the chef Chip Smith. He cooks incredible French-style food that has a little bit of his Carolina tinge. And then the front of house is Tina, and they're partners. And it's just such a beautiful dance. There are only like 13 tables in the dining room. The other time we went, Steve Martin was sitting behind me. It's like you have the table for the night. And I loved the dinner rolls so much. They just give you, in a very quiet way, they bring you one dinner roll at the start of the meal, and it's the most perfect dinner roll. It's like crusty on the outside. It's kind of like a sourdough. Sorry, it's not like a sourdough. It's kind of like a baguette.
Okay.
So and then I learned how to make it from him because I just wanted to know the process, and it's this lovely bread that he starts at 10 a.m. and then by the time it's dinner service at 5, he bakes them off. It's risen 3 times. It's just such a special roll. And I mean, I'm not going to talk about the rest of the food because it would take forever, but this dinner roll is so good. And it just shows you the kind of attention that this chef puts on everything. And so it's so special that that's our birthday meal. I always try to tell people about that place. It's kind of like a take your dad type of restaurant. It's a little pricey, but it's incredible.
My restaurant pick, and I'll get mine, is a similar take your mom or dad vibe. Steve Martin story. I have a friend who once spilled an entire glass of red wine on Steve Martin.
Oh no!
At a wedding.
Whoa!
At a wedding.
What did Steve Martin do?
I recall from the story that he took it in stride.
Wow, good.
She was young at the time. I think she was maybe in middle school or high school. So, she's drinking wine, so she was definitely a little bit older than middle school.
Yeah.
But I think she said he was graceful in the
nice.
But like at a wedding,
that's good to know. Yeah, at a wedding,
red wine wedding. It's not a great. My restaurant is also, as I said, like kind of it's the vibe of you can take your parents there. It's not getting as much press as I'd like to see because I had such an outstanding meal. It's called Wayward Fare, and it's from Akhtar Nawab. Have you been?
No, I haven't.
This place?
No.
It's really, really good. Akhtar, a legend in the game, going back to the early 2000s, even the 90s, I think he worked at Kraft under, obviously Tom Colicchio, but that's when David Chang was there. And there was like a real crew of chefs working at Kraft. And, Akhtar was later at EU in the East Village and a couple other restaurants. He worked at La Esquina for, I think, a decade plus. What I like about Wayward Fare is, the idea is that it's following the spice route. So he's cooking with like spice and, flavors in mind that are of the, Middle East into the Mediterranean. And, it's not high concept. Some of these restaurants that open become like it's all about the concept.
Yeah.
His is like kind of in the background. And what he's really doing, it's all shared plates. All the plates are perfectly proportioned for sharing, which I love.
Nice.
You can feel sometimes when they're like forcing shared plates on you on plates that don't make sense. The server was like assertive that you need to order 6, and like I like that.
Nice. Yeah.
And what he's doing is he's doing really technical cooking, steak, chicken, whole fish fillet. All those proteins, we tried 3 of them. They were perfectly cooked.
Wow.
Like really, really great technique. A lot of it coming out of the wood fire.
Yeah.
And what my highlight dish was from this restaurant, Wayward Fare, was this spicy chicory salad. To have a green salad with a dressing that actually has kick and spice to it, not just acidity and like an oil or something, within that fat realm. Really remarkable to be able to do a spicy salad. I think it can be very challenging.
That's cool. I love when a salad is the star. Also, isn't it always the case that a wood fire grill or a wood fire oven is usually the result? Like the result of that is an excellent restaurant.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something, that high heat that you can't get otherwise.
I think so. I think it's like so technically challenging to do proteins in an oven. I mean, of course, if you have a Neapolitan pizzeria,
right?
You've done like 1 or 10. You're on your 1,000th. It's probably the same. Yeah. Of course, getting it the heat to the right temperature is important. But to do proteins, it's really the sign of an excellent chef.
I love that we're talking about restaurants because I feel like whenever I talk to you, you have a real sense of the history of New York. And like because you've been
old,
here
buddy. I'm a little older.
But you really, what is it like to have this genealogy in your head? Because I know that I like find out the genealogy or the history of a place, in the books. But I feel like you're often like speaking from experience. What's it like having that kind of like New York, literacy?
Thanks for being really smooth with my my age in New York. I mean, I moved here in 2000, and so I think I've had like 25 years of experience in New York, and I think I've been writing about food for 15 years. So I've been able to go to many different restaurants and keep these relationships going. I lived in the East Village at the beginning. So I was in the East Village from 2002 to 2005, which I think was a really exciting time.
Yeah.
And I think like I got a sense of that style of East Village dining and like restaurants that like Bao 111, for example, was like right down the street from me, which was like a pioneering Vietnamese restaurant. And I got to go there. I'm going to Kate's, Kate's Joint back when it was like, I bring it up a lot on the show because I just love that memory of Kate's. And then like moving to Brooklyn in 2005 offered a really cool opportunity to move to Carroll Gardens when, Frankie's was there. I think they moved there in 2002. They opened in 2002. But like it's a neighborhood that didn't have a lot of restaurants. And Cobble Hill had very few as well. It was mostly Park Slope. And then North Brooklyn was really just starting. I think, Andrew Tarlow was opening restaurants in 2000 with Diner. But like I was able to see New York restaurants explode and the interest in them explode. So I think in talking to guests a lot on the show, we go back into time, and I like to try to talk about this era before restaurants were social capital.
Yeah. I feel like I'm hitting a point in my life where I've been in New York for 16 years now, but I kind of came here for college, and so I didn't have money to go to these kinds of restaurants. But now that I have, worked in the industry a little bit and have written about food and have reported in kitchens, it's a real pleasure to feel like you have some kind of relationship to the city. I feel, I know people say it's 10 years, but I think now I can walk by a restaurant and know the 10-year story of that place, and that feels really good. Sorry. Is that okay?
Yeah, we're rolling with it here on YouTube. Yeah, that's how we're doing it.
Where I was was walking by Devel recently, and that place used to be open for dinner, and that's where I met Priya Krishna for the first time. I met with her when Indianish was coming out. It was like the beginning of all of our careers, and they served a really delicious spaghetti Napolitan, and it's kind of like this like ketchup-y, spaghetti. And it's been 10 years since I had that. And this week, I went into the kitchen with the original person who kind of put that on the menu. She made it for me, and I watched her make it, learned how to make it. And when I took a bite, I realized that she was probably the one in the kitchen who made that plate for me and Priya.
Oh, that's cool.
And it made me like really emotional because I was like, wow, we didn't know this, but I have a connection to you. Like you made my favorite spaghetti Napolitan in the world. And so I'm writing about it for like June this year. But it's I love that thing. I love that about New York. People stay.
Yeah. People stay if they like it or not, to be honest. Like some of these restaurants remain because it's just it's their source of income and it has to remain. And I like the 10-year reminder, when a restaurant hits 10. It's like such a remarkable thing. I just had Enrique Alvara in. We'll have an episode up in a couple weeks, and Cosime just turned 10.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy to think? And like
I remember when that opened. Yeah.
Remember when it opened? And before, nixtamalization,
right? We
now write about it very... it's common lexicon in many ways. A very important technique for making masa into tamales and tortillas. I remember when him and Daniela were opening Cosime, they were talking about their heritage corn. And that they were flying in or trucking in from Mexico, and this idea of nixtamalization. I had no idea. I had never heard that term a decade ago.
Yeah, of course.
And so now they're 10 years later, we have this perception of nixtamalization as being table stakes, so to speak, for a good modern Mexican restaurant in New York.
I remember watching Daniela give a talk at MoFad and watching her take a tortilla and dip it in like lime juice. It was really simple. And that kind of that was really an influential moment for me. Every time I ate a quesadilla, just something really simple, I think of that moment. Just she was talking about simplicity in cooking.
Yeah.
That's something that I didn't appreciate until later in life, I think.
Well, I love how restaurants really inform your writing and you bring them back to the home cook and through your column and through your work at the Times food desk. Let's talk about some writing. I think that's part of the show is to go over some stories that we've enjoyed. So I pulled out a few. We'll talk about one of the pieces you've written recently. But this week, the New York Times, your buddies over there, published a story about steak fries. Steak fries, deservedly reviled or underappreciated edible spoons. Great headline. Really funny. The idea is that steak fries only are about 2% of the fry business. They quoted Neil Doherty at Cisco and said, he's basically like in the 70s and 80s. Steak fries were everywhere, and now they're kind of dead. I loved how, David Siegel profiles this kitchen, Park Avenue Kitchen. They're doing a steak fry with camembert, grated Parmesan, charged shishito peppers, parsley, chili oil, bacon cured with maple syrup. And, to top it off, the one of the great quotes, and those are slices of preserved lemons. He's pointing at the preserved lemons in the scene. He's adding a little acidity to it. Steak fries are not the steak fries of the Ground Round. R.I.P. Did you ever go to Ground Round?
No.
You pay what you weigh. Remember that? Really? You pay what you weigh. They have popcorn, little helmet sundaes.
Oh,
yeah. You're like,
I'm more of a juniors guy. I did ask Alan Rosen why they served steak fries before this, and he just said because they're for potato people. I guess that's sort of it's an old fashioned thing. I like how the reporter went into Cisco and all that data, because that's what I love most about food culture. Sometimes the reason we eat the things we eat, they're actually really like arbitrary or just like business answers.
Yes.
Or it's just something to do with how people are producing. My kind of thing with steak fries is I'm a huge fry aficionado, I would say. I'm really picky about them, and steak fries, I do enjoy them, but I think the best version I had was just on a random Friday. I was walking through Carroll Gardens, and there was a Greek diner I wanted to sit at, and I got the fries that had, it was all this crumbled feta on top, oregano, and like lemon, and you could squeeze the lemon on top, but it was the perfect creamy, salty, and I think that, and reading the story about those loaded steak fries made me think about how Steak fries should be more considered like potatoes, maybe. Just like
Yeah.
I mean, obviously fries are potatoes, but I don't know. Steak fry feels like the wrong. I think when you think of them more as like a vehicle for, I guess that's what he wrote.
I think in the
sauce,
piece he also said like it was for a generation where potatoes were part of
the meal.
And I don't know if you remember the 90s, Suzanne Powder, Stop the Insanity, had this big, this like potato moment where she was like saying you could eat like 75 baked potatoes and it's the same fat as like a slice of cheese. That was when basically zero fat was at its highest peak. Like she was like, you can eat all the potatoes you want because there's no fat. Interesting science there. I'm sure it was not proven to be that successful in weight loss, but I think it was tapping into a time when potatoes were consumed in
diet food
rigor. Spa food. Potatoes is spa food.
This reminds me, sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but I'm doing a bunch of Craig Claiborne research right now for a column about Chickenella King, and he sort of, when you read his biography towards the end, he's kind of getting into low salt, maybe no salt, like low fat food. And he's this man who's writing for the public about food culture. I kind of sometimes wonder if that's the connection. 80s, 90s, like once the health food kind of trend really, had that heyday, was it a remnant of, this man who's telling America how to eat for half a decade or half a century? It's, I wonder.
Yeah, tracing the Craig Claiborne effect for that diet.
Yeah, Craig Claiborne effect. Because I don't know about you, but reading, I think when I read about food history, that's usually my angle into the reporting as well. But one thing I always realize is that the world is so small, and media kind of reaches so many people, and it reaches very specific people who are the ones who influence the way the rest of the people eat. And I guess that's that's why we have like influencers in that word now. But
tip of the spear.
And so I don't know. This steak fry story makes me wonder. Like, I wonder if this is going to move the needle or make people remember steak fries and want to serve them more.
Definitely shifts markets, at least sometimes. The potato market. Some would say. Yeah. Okay, back to what you said about Carroll Gardens. Were you at Avli?
It was on Court Street.
And like first place, second?
Maybe. I think so.
I used to live, that was like literally my block. Those fries, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The steak fries. Yeah, they're good. They were good really plain too. I'm sure they were good plain. I'm not really a poutine guy, but I like a loaded, I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed the loaded dry toppings vibe.
Yeah, it's a great one. Next story. It's a story we published on Taste this week by Annie Heasel, my former colleague and former co-host of our podcast. What can't jerk do?
Yeah.
And Anna writes, quote, in the last year or so, I've seen jerk transform from a grilling technique that permeates meat with smoke, allspice, and Scotch bonnet pepper into a fluid descriptor that's been applied to dumplings, rum cocktails, ice cream, and even fast food quesadillas. She gives a little bit of history about jerk and how the Maroons in Jamaica had taken inspiration from the Taino people, the Spanish people who were indigenous there, and really they were using jerk as a preservative, but it was always smoked underground, so it's like a smoking and preserving technique. She interviews a chef, London Chase from Mango Grill. Gotta go there. I'm like, when I was editing this copy, I was
sounds so good.
London Chase has got some skills. He's doing jerk, an octopus, a grilled octopus with a jerk rub, and a jerk gremolata, and a jerk aioli over a burger. So he's thinking about jerk in a lot of different ways. And finally, Paul Carmichael from Kabawa, we had him on the show, talks a little bit about the frustration with jerk really making Caribbean food, placing it into a box. And I think he's thinking about, jerk shouldn't define Caribbean food, while there are Caribbean chefs, offering their interpretations of jerk as a way to show innovation. So there's a little bit of tension there between the chef community around this topic. And I think Anna did a really nice job of splitting the difference. And I think the biggest misperception about jerk that came through in this piece is that it is not just jerk chicken. It's not just jerk. Jerk is not just chicken,
Perpetual tension between the tradition and honoring that and then extending it or updating it so that it can survive.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. Well, I have to say first that it was great to see Anna's byline and to see the date. It was published this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. And I really remember, like, I miss her voice on the podcast, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, Anna.
Shouts to Anna.
Yeah.
We love her.
I mean, that whole piece really made me think about how a soundbite culinarily, and in my case, I've really studied gochujang, of course, and seen its possibilities and seen the way it can almost like carry a culture or like introduce people to a cuisine and then get them to research more and to care about it. But that tension's hard, and I totally understand. I think the thing I really enjoyed about the piece was that she ended on the opposite of what food writing pieces usually end on. Usually, in a food writing piece, you know, in these days, you sort of talk about the origin and the authenticity, and then the tension comes. But then at the end, it's usually fanning out to there are many ways to be Korean or Caribbean. There are many ways to do jerk, and they're all valid. And that's usually like the final note. But I like that how she ended on the chef's comment about. If he says right, if it doesn't taste, if a grandmother can taste it and can't say that it tastes like her mother's cooking, then it's maybe we've gone too far from the origin. I just butchered that, but I think that ending on that really made me think. It made me. I mean, I'm not Caribbean myself, but it made me think about that side of the conversation, which is there are benefits to preserving, and I've seen people, you know, doing it for their cuisines right now, and you see these waves that happen with culture. Like the Chinese American culinary conversation is a little different than the Korean one because their timelines are different.
I love that you talk about the walk-off quote or the walk-off line and how I agree. A lot of writing, it's a little both sidesy. It's like a little bit of like a bow, and I think we fight that here when we're editing, when Eliza and I are editing our features every week. Here, we're food writers talking about food writing here. Let's get into it.
How nerdy this is.
I was like, before we record, I was like, we're not going to get
this?
into nut graph and story structure on this show. It'll be really boring. But because you brought off the walk-off, and I'm using that as the term we use for the final quote or the kicker, and also, honestly, good writing and good editors scrutinize the walk-off because the hope is that if you get past a third of the reading, you're going to get to the end.
Right. I actually never heard walk-off. I call it a stinger always.
Yeah.
But it's because I write like that, and now I'm wondering if I should stop doing stingers. Wait, sorry. What I also wanted to say was as I was reading her piece, I was thinking, gosh, this is so much work. Like, how long did she have to do this reporting? Maybe she like slowly did it over a year. Like, when did you guys talk about this story?
It's great. We're getting.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, I think Anna came to us with the story idea sometime, I would say, in January.
Whoa.
And I know she was heading down to Jamaica for a food festival, or maybe not Jamaica, but the Caribbean. And I think what I liked about her reporting for the piece is that she went to Kabawa with a cookbook author who was in town, the author of Kin, and did some nice scene setting there, and you know, met Paul there and like had a little bit of a dynamic there. Took the scene down to the Caribbean, comes back to her home in Jamaica. Sorry, her home in the Jamaican neighborhood in Brooklyn that she lives in. Mm-hmm. And I just loved the way she reported it. I mean, Anna has written a few stories since she left Taste. And she just has a terrific sense of structure. She's like a terrific editor in that sense as well. And I really like that you called that out.
Yeah, I like the maximalist source building and evidence building. Yeah. That's something that I really aspire to, but sometimes we don't always have time. You know?
It's about time, right? Like,
it's about time.
Reporting stories and you have a deadline. I mean, I always like to try to build up a source list before I even start writing. And then you start getting on the phone, building out the case.
Yeah.
We really push our writers, and all of them really do the work and do as well. I think this whole like concept of us talking about food writing is, I mean, I feel like we're in an era. I didn't think I would go in this direction, actually. Well, we're going to go there.
Let's do it.
I just feel it's important to do a show and episodes of our podcast, if you're listening to this on audio, about what we do on the page. We're not talking about social video. We're not talking about podcasts even. We're talking about food writing. And I've been feeling a lot of, it's like, I've been feeling some ambivalence about text on the page.
Because so much of it is lukewarm and mediocre. Sorry,
not at all. I actually think we have a spoil of riches. I mean, especially with Substack.
Yeah.
We've got incredible writing happening.
Yeah.
I just think that when you look at the general audience for food writing, not just the 10,000 people who live in New York, LA, San Francisco, London, who are like really in the community and reading, maybe it's even 5,000.
Yeah.
But like looking at our wide audience, and folks listening to the show may be part of that. I would hope you are, who are not just living in these cities, but are like enjoying our what we're putting out there. We're putting a lot of work into this, and it's hard to compete for attention.
Yeah, it is.
With words on the page, and we really put a lot of effort into these articles every week.
Yeah, it's sort of at my job, we do a video, a story, and a recipe for everything. And sometimes I know that the thing that people really looked at was the video, and sometimes I'm like, oh, all the context is in the story, and the heart is in there.
All the writing is.
And I really want people to read, but people don't read as much anymore. People listen to things maybe. But I have to say the reporting part is. I'm always surprised at how it happens. I basically filed a column and I was done with it, but there's one last source I wanted to check, and I wasn't going to interview him, but I had the dish. It's chicken a la king. There's only like 1 or 2 restaurants in New York that still serve it.
No way.
Yeah, and I went to this place, Chechi's, and it was really good, and then I was able to leave my information. He called me as I was walking out of the restaurant. He wasn't there at the time. Anyway, the owner we had this 10-minute conversation, but it was the perfect thing that my story was missing. And so like right after this, I'm going to go, type it up and try to like incorporate it, because I think the more sources you have, the more evidence you have, just the more you're able to build out the truth of that piece. And it's like the feeling of you want to give it your all. You want to give it every vantage point you can, at least the relevant ones. And I think that's something that I don't know. I think is so important in reporting, and I hope people will continue to value that.
I want to take a little break from the stories and talk about a social media moment this week that was pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So I know we're talking about food writing, but it's related. Our friend Eli Sussman, or my friend, I think you know him as well. Did an April Fool's joke that I think was pretty well played, my friend. He had, with visual evidence, that he was named as the New York Times restaurant critic, and that it was a real honor to be the first chef named restaurant critic. And he dropped that like strategically around 8:30 in the morning on April 1st, before I think some people, obviously wake up and check the gram right away, maybe before their coffee. Yeah. And you're seeing the headline, you're not realizing what date it is. Yeah. And a lot of people thought it was real. You jumped into the comments, which is amazing because you helped corroborate this whole thing. You didn't say, you did enough to sell it. Melissa was in there, Clark. What the hell, man? What went on at the New York Times that morning when he was saying he's the new critic?
Nothing. Just that we all thought it was hilarious. We really enjoyed it. I think I love that because he also took my photo. I had a photo of myself in the office holding out a sign for this whatever. And he photoshopped it and put himself in. And the Photoshop job is so good that it took me. I had to compare the pictures. I thought that was hilarious. But I think I like the way he adds humor to everything he does into the industry, because I think sometimes we all take ourselves way too seriously. I mean, a lot, maybe 90% of the time, just way too seriously. And I think having that humor is important because, I don't know, just bringing it a little down is good for everyone. And I love his. I think his stuff is hilarious. I enjoy all the jokes.
I enjoyed the jokes. This one was super well played. A couple of people wrote me and said, "Oh my God, can you imagine?" I actually did not respond because it's funny when he sold it really well. Yeah. And then of course he went on social the next day and said that he was fired or resigning, and did it in such a well played way. I love the Sussman.
Yeah, I think my thing is I like when people poke fun at social media and just make fun of it. And because we're all living in this phone all the time, and so much of food media was our activity on Instagram, I feel like. And I'm only just now preening off it and just realizing how toxic that's been. And I like that he is taking the form and taking people's attention, but using it to make fun of it a little. Yeah. I think that's really important. I just dismantle it. Instagram. Sorry, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, it's. I have a very complicated relationship with my phone because I feel like it's part of the job to be on top of what's happening. If I just ignored social media, I don't think I'd be doing my job for the podcast or for Taste in general.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, that shit is toxic, and I don't really care about most of it.
Yeah,
to be honest.
And just connecting it to our discussion about like why people should read still.
Yeah.
Media literacy is just at an all-time low. Social media kind of has made, I mean, that's what he's sort of making fun of, I think, Eli Sussman. He's making fun of the fact that people can't, they don't have the literacy to see that post and recognize that, oh, that font is a little off. Like, that's not a real headline. But it was kind of a good headline.
It was a really good headline. His fonts were pretty close. I'm surprised you couldn't match the fonts, but it's got to be some time secret. They you can't match the fonts.
I don't know.
But he really pulled a good one. And I think his like memes as well.
Yeah.
Poking at the hypocrisy of celebrity culture around food.
Yeah.
Also, he gives deep commentary into the industry, what it's like to be a working chef, and he does a lot of great memes about cost of goods and the stresses that chefs have about certain holidays. Like, he really has a wide industry following.
Yeah, really he does. And I was at a bar that day, and the bartender was like, "That's crazy, right? You guys got a new food critic." And I was like,
"Shit, really?
Oh no, that was a joke." But yeah,
that is amazing.
So I just saying, like, he did a good job. I think it also gave him a lot of exposure, which is good because he has a book coming out soon, right? And we're talking about it now.
I don't know. Like, I think he might be working on something. Yeah. I think that there's a project in the works.
Yeah.
I think we can announce that in the future at some point, and it'll be exciting to see Eli's actual, writing in that way. I want to move on to another story from the week. It's one by you.
Oh.
I really enjoyed it. I think I texted you right away. And I loved, speaking of reading, I actually, the first time I saw it and knew about it was in my print copy of the New York Times
magazine.
I
love that. Yeah, I think he texted me on a Sunday.
I read it on the Sunday.
That was really sweet.
I do not go first for the magazine. I go first for, what do I go? What do you go first for? And you know the reference? That old New York Times magazine, New York Times subscriber commercial.
No, I don't know what you're talking about, actually.
Oh, God, this reference is so... Okay, let me back up for a second.
Yeah.
Let me back up for
okay.
And Sam was in Sifton. He got the reference, obviously, because he was like clearly probably involved in writing it. So it was a famous commercial, probably ran in the early 2000s, where it was like extremely white people... like talking about their Sunday and really they were talking about where they go first. I go first for the magazine. I go for travel and I go for arts and leisure.
Wow.
And really and that was my reference. That is that story.
Yeah. I'm just like right now shocked that there was even a TV ad for something like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, the New York Times used to have TV ads when like being a print subscriber was like the main revenue generator for them, and they were like fighting over. I go for arts and leisure. It was like amazing.
We're going here. My favorite New York Times magazine reference is from King of the Hill. I think Bobby Hill is reading it, and his dad walks in. It's like, "What are you reading?" He's like, "The New York Times magazine," and he like snatches it because there's this whole tension between the dad wanting his son to be more quote unquote masculine, and I think that's hilarious.
Oh, that's a funny bit. I like that. It's a joke. So in the magazine, you wrote lessons from Germany on a better bratwurst. It's part of your monthly column in the magazine. I love this piece. It's such a classic Eric Kim. I'm referring to the third person because I like to do that style of writing, because you're doing a lot of your own story and your kind of connection to the subjects, which was very deep too because it was your fiance's family, but also getting some great cultural context and reporting, and then a great recipe at the end. Makes a great column. You're doing it under 800 words.
Thanks.
Tell me a little bit about it. You made this trip to Joachim, Germany. I definitely mispronounced that. Sorry, Bavarian friends. Why were you in Germany?
Oh, I was in Germany because to meet my partner's family. I had just proposed, and it was my first time in Germany. He wanted to introduce me to all of his relatives and all the family friends, and so it was kind of a meet the family situation, and also my first trip with his parents and his brother, and
fun.
It was a real like initiation into the family. So it was. But what's funny about that story is the trip was it was in the summer of last year, so I've been sort of gestating it for a very long time. And I think or I don't know if like a few months is a long time for people, but as a digital baby, I feel like that's a long time. That trip, what was really kind of profound for me was staying at his great aunt's house, and that house, I feel like I'm trying not to like get too. I don't want to get too emotional about it because it's like, but I had this profound experience with this woman that I was meeting for the first time, but this thing that we have in common is my fiance, and her hospitality, her love, the way she cooked in her kitchen. It was a Frankfurt kitchen, and we were about to move homes, and I think I had this week of peace in that house. It's this beautiful wooden house that just really like moves and breathes with the nature of the land, and that's these German sensibilities that I really noticed and wanted to apply to my own life when I came home to New York, which was a messy life in a skyrise, and I was really depressed. And I think I wanted to get that across, but I also just wanted to say thanks to her. Oh. And I think we have this language barrier, but I tried to say it with my eyes, but like it wasn't enough, and so I was holding on to these words for a very long time, and it felt good to finally write it. And she got a copy, and then she was proud that bratwurst she described it as like bratwurst finally making it to America. But I think it's been in America. But what was really interesting about the story though was kind of getting to really almost academically sort of understand my partner's culture better, and it helped me to really understand him, like all his quirks. I think they come from a cultural place. Yeah, a lot of them.
This is in Bavaria, correct?
And yeah, it's he lives in, or he's from the Pfalz, like Palatinate region.
Yeah. Now, I love the little moment in the piece where you talk about finally having understanding about how he eats so much bread.
Yeah.
Well, and you kind of like let it hang a bit, which I love about that part of the article. When you don't give it all away, which I love that, when you just don't give it all away. Well, what did you realize, or soon you realized that there was a big bread culture there?
Yeah, I think it was, the second we got there, jet lagged. His great aunt Margit, she made us this huge breakfast, and it was a huge breakfast spread every morning, and then as I started learning about how she put it together and why she put it together. What I realized was that she wanted to show me German bread. And she was going to different bakery every morning, biking there, getting fresh rolls. And so every morning there was a different type of roll. And so I was eating a lot of bread. I noticed because my stomach was like, this is a lot of gluten and I need some rice. But once I got past that, I started to understand that the way he eats, I understood the way he eats better because, Paolo wakes up every morning, has so much bread and butter. Just like to me, it's like a lot of bread and butter. He doesn't necessarily have an egg. Maybe he'll have fruit sometimes. But I think what I learned from my trip and my time in that beautiful house was that Germans kind of spread out their diet throughout the day. So, in the morning, it's going to be like more of a continental-y breakfast, bread and cheeses and fruits and then. And it's heavy, but it's not heavy necessarily on the protein. And then for lunch, that's when you have, the big bratwurst meal. I mean, that's basically, I was just so touched by the recipe was a bratwurst with mashed potatoes, and she made it for us, and she kind of took the bratwurst out of the freezer, and in 30 minutes we had dinner. And watching her work in that kitchen and sort of whip up the potatoes and then hand that plate in front of, like put that plate down in front of me, there was a divot in the potatoes and the bratwurst fat was still sizzling in that divot, and I just felt so taken care of, and it was so delicious. It was a good meal. The bratwurst is really rich, but the potatoes were seasoned really gently, so that the balance was there. Even though if you look at the plate, it seems like really rich, but the balance is there. And so when I started cooking that at home to try to replicate that, that recipe, I sort of start to understand the German palate, the German, cuisine, and then got to talk to Louisa Weiss, and got to talk to more people, and for dinner you eat something light. It's kind of like you don't
Louisa,
really eat dinner.
When she was on the podcast, we talked about the way that the sweets kind of roll in at dinner time. It's like a sweeter dinner potentially.
Yeah.
Back to the bratwurst.
Mm-hmm.
when you have a potato and you have a bratwurst, is that it? Is that kind of the plate?
That is the plate, but I think it's the orchestra of the recipe.
Yeah.
I think when some people who like see a simple recipe like there, a familiar plate of sausages and mashed potatoes, they're like, why is there a recipe for this? But you can make it in 30 minutes. That's the thing. It's like, I don't know, I figured out a way to have the potatoes boiling.
Mm-hmm.
I quarter them so that, you don't have to peel them, but you can like slip off the peels once the potatoes are done boiling.
Love that tip.
Yeah, and then you don't season them that much. It's really potatoey, potato forward, and it's the same trick I learned from Nick Anderer, which is you can mash the potato as much as you want before you add the liquid, and once you add the liquid, you fold it in, and that's sort of this like secret I think that carries through all mashed potatoes. And then the bratwurst is really the thing. You're working, when I'm developing that recipe, I'm working with American products. And what that means is we don't really have access to fresh bratwurst, maybe Italian sausage, sweet Italian, whatever. But there are purveyors of fully cooked bratwurst, and I think my goal, I developed this recipe between my time in Atlanta over the holidays and New York. But the goal is to take that deli meat, section product, bratwurst, that's fully cooked, and kind of like give life to it again. And the one way that I found was really lovely was kind of simmering it first in a little water and butter, and but also piercing it, because once you pierce the bratwurst, it really lets out its fat, and then you cover the pan and then you remove the pan. What happens then is the bratwurst has been kind of like fluffed up again, kind of like it has more moisture on the inside, but also the fat has rendered into the water, and then the water evaporates, and then it sizzles in its own fat. And I think that I like when what you end up with is a bratwurst that tastes really of the bratwurst, because really that product is special. It's great meat. It's really good, really lovely spices, right? That's what makes bratwurst special, I think. And I don't know. It's I hope people can appreciate that I'm trying to like help people take really ordinary ingredients from the store and just also show them that if you look hard enough, there is probably a bratwurst at your store. There might be one brand of it, but you should try it. And then doing this method will bring it to life and make it feel like you're having a fresh bratwurst dinner.
Love that sentiment. When you were there on the trip, were you thinking story? Were you thinking that this would be something to write about? And when you were in Germany in general, as a reporter on the road, but you're on holiday, you're visiting family. How do you think about your writing when you're spending like more of a leisure time overseas?
It's really hard not to think in story. I'm always
same.
I come back from
way.
You go and travel. You're supposed to rest and not think about work, but then I can't help it, and I come back and I'm really excited to talk to Genevieve about all the delicious things I ate. And frankly, I got a lot of stories out of that trip, because what I really loved eating, in that area of Germany was the German interpretation of other cuisines. That's fun. I mean, in Margaret's home, I had the German food, but I think, the German take on Italian pasta or Italian pizza is really interesting. It's really specific. I was really in love actually with the German, with Greek immigrants in Germany cooking, their food, and that food is catering towards the Germans, and so that specific, I had a really amazing tzatziki that was. It was so special. It was fluffy. It was really strained. It was really
because they're using like German dairy in that tzatziki, so it's different. Like a probably a little different than like a traditional Greek, which is really amazing and different than, of course, in America, which is a totally different dairy culture.
And I like bringing out those nuances in my writing and my reporting, because that's sort of my mantra. I wonder one day if it's not going to be the mantra anymore. But with food writing, I like to show people these kinds of nuances in culture. So, because I feel like so much of media is about just getting it down at all, like getting it down the original or the traditional or the authentic. But I think right now our generation is writing about how that doesn't exist, and it hasn't existed for a while. Like you have immigrants moving about the world, and cuisine is just so fluid, and the way it forms is what's interesting, and that's the story to me.
Love it, Eric. Well, I want to do this segment on our show, Food Writers Talking About Food Writing. Hit that subscribe if you're on YouTube. We're going to come back every couple of weeks.
Smash that like button.
Oh, we're going to go do that? We're going to do smash the like. I mean, there are comments below here, so you can definitely comment? Is there like a story of Eric's that you love? Is there something that we said that offended you?
There's something in my brain that's like, when I see the camera and it clicks, I automatically have this spiel that's like, if you want this recipe and many more, go to NYT Cooking.
Hey, go to NYT Cooking. I'm going to point right at that. No, I'm doing your lines. But we're going to do this segment. I'm absolutely enchanted with the Graydon Carter memoir. And we have a 3 things coming up where I talk at length about a review of it. But Graydon Carter, famously the editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair for over 25 years. We're going to frame this. The question is, what would you pitch 1997 Graydon Carter today? The idea is that in 1997, Graydon Carter was assigning stories out at $75,000 plus expenses paid.
Oh my God.
Report on it for a year, 2 years. Come back, tell us what you got.
Yeah.
Do that do that like repeat. That's why Vanity Fair was truly a one-of-one magazine. I just absolutely loved Vanity Fair. So I want to know, Eric, you got this budget, you got this time, you got Graydon Carter editing you, which I'm sure is a nice experience. What would that story be?
Gosh, sorry. I just have to get over the fact that an advance could be that big for an article. An article. This industry, I can't relate. I don't know what that's like. But recently, I went to Ohio for an academic conference. It was the Asian Studies conference, and I had incredible Nigerian food in Columbus, and that family was doing really special cooking. And so I guess what I would love to do is really travel America and go to each state, go to the parts that aren't covered, and find out what people are actually cooking, in these pockets of culture. And because to me, American cuisine, I'm as an Americanist or American historian, like I'm fascinated by the way it is now, but it really is going to take on the ground reporters to even tell that story. And when I was there, I was reading John Steinbeck, not to be like, but that
you're reading John Steinbeck.
Yeah, he's kind of like the reason I got into writing at all, or literary anything. But he, Grapes of Wrath was a serial nonfiction assignment. It was for a paper. Nonfiction assignment sounds weird for that, but he was reporting on the Dust Bowl, and then he turned it into a novel. But all that reporting was because he was on, he was with them and with the migrant workers who were displaced by the banks. Anyway, I think for me, I would love to. I like meeting people and being in their kitchens and talking to them, and I love a New York restaurant, but it's nice to be outside of New York and to be in places like Ohio or I don't know. I just love the United States. It's fascinating. I like it academically, I should say.
That makes sense. I think that would fit into Vanity Fair. My story, if I had a year and expenses paid, I would want to write the definitive Taco Bell story.
Oh, wow.
Because I think I haven't read the New York Times, or was it New Yorker, did a pretty good job. Yeah. But New Yorker's 2025 is not working with Graydon Carter in 97. So I really am fascinated by this chain. I just heard recently that a boutique hot sauce company was approached by Taco Bell, and they're going to be on the menu
cool.
of Taco Bell. So like my thought is like, I want to obviously go to the test kitchen in Southern California and see how the innovation happens. Right. But I really want to go around the country and see how Taco Bell is consumed in different markets. Yeah. How Taco Bell plays into the relationship with food. Right. Are these daily visits? Are there like social groups that meet at Taco Bell? So there's like a culinary story, but like the zoom out is definitely more of a cultural story, or a story that talks about economics. Yeah. And I think the single chain, it really touches a lot of America in unique ways. Yeah. Obviously, it's like Mexican cuisine in Mexico, and our relationship with Mexico right now is at an all-time fucked up, I would say, just to be frank and be blunt. I was talking to Enrique Alvaro about this recently in the studio. It'll be up later, but I just really think we need to talk more about our relationship with Mexico and Mexican Americans and people from Mexico who live here. Yeah. And so there's like there's a lot to talk about with Taco Bell. So I think I would like to take that money and write that story.
I love that. Meanwhile, my brain's going to, God, I love those cheese fries. They're so
The
good.
fries are okay. I can't say I like them.
Oh, really?
I'm not in the cheese fry. I like the Cantina menu a lot.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
Cantina menu speaks to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a little more. It's like their version of the LA style.
Yeah.
They have like a green packet.
Yeah.
Of course, they've got like the soda fountain is always changing.
Yeah.
And PepsiCo just acquired Poppy.
Yeah.
So like, are we going to see Poppy at Taco Bell?
What's interesting about Taco Bell is like it's been around for so long. I recently, when I was back home, my mom requested it, and I was really surprised. I was like, okay, so I got her a chalupa, and I got my cheesy gordita crunch or whatever.
Yeah.
And we just sat at the kitchen island and ate it, and she was like, "That was incredible. That was exactly what I wanted." And I think we were having some beers, and I remember thinking like, what is her story? Like her relationship to Taco Bell is immigrating here in 1984 and probably eating that once in a while, or buying it for us and having a taste. And my mom likes sour cream a lot, and that's something that she knows every time she goes to a Mexican restaurant. She's like, or Mexican American restaurant, I should say.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
It's a really rich topic to tap into.
I love it.
Or get in touch, Taco Bell, if you wanna like work on a collab. We could tell your stories.
Yeah.
So that would be mine. I appreciate you. I wonder if Graydon would appreciate these ideas.
I'm sure he would.
I mean, I love that memoir. More to come about that. So we're gonna end this episode, and thank you for sticking with us, listeners and viewers. And Eric, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For kicking this new style of show that we're putting out. I just love talking to journalists. I think it's we have a lot of amazing guests on the show who we get to interview in our studio, but I think my heart sings when I get to talk to a fellow writer about their work, and this we're going to continue doing on this show. But as we always end on our podcast, we have a taste check. So I want to do a media edition. So I'm going to say it as I always say it on this Taste with Gus and Brothers Cerny Say. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire Fast and Furious taste check media edition. Eric Kim, are you ready?
I am ready.
And Clayton, our lead producer, mentioned it's a valid point. When I ask that question, we say rapid fire Fast and Furious, but typically that shit can be slow. Like the answers can be long.
I'll try to go fast.
You don't have to. I think it's actually maybe a joke that I say rapid fire Fast and Furious, or maybe that's just what is on my mind when I ask that last question. But
it gives it an urgency.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to end it. And here's some guests are kind of like, one word answers, and I'm cool with that. But anyways, this is the media version. What is the first thing you read in the morning, and where do you read it?
Unfortunately, it's my phone, and not unfortunately, it's voice notes from my friends. Now that there's transcripts, I like sometimes read the first couple of sentences just so I know what I'm waking up to, and then I'll listen to it. Later.
So you don't just go to the transcripts; you're actually listening to it too.
I listen to it later, but in the morning I will read the transcript to be like, what am I going to read today? Sort of my digest.
What do you read on actual paper, if anything?
I read a lot of books. I mean, I think when I'm trying to get the food history, I have a huge library and I don't know, I think what I tend to write about, a period of time where it's not digital. So you have like the only way to find out about Craig Claiborne somehow, like in the real way, is to go to the books. So, and nonfiction, just novels, of course. I don't know. I always have a paperback in my bag.
You aren't Kindle or?
No, I'm really not.
You're not.
I don't know. As a recovering English literature PhD, dropout. Paperbacks.
What was your favorite food publication growing up?
Foodnetwork.com. Food Network.
Publication can be broadcast
Foodnetwork.com. Yeah, I think it was foodnetwork.com. But I have to say, I didn't know food media or food writing was a thing until I started working at the Food Network, because I was on this other career path. But when I was discovering it, I really loved reading Mayuk Sen. He was writing at Food 52 at the time. I loved reading him, and John Birdsall, wherever he was publishing. And I'm not just saying this, but I was reading Taste Cooking, of course.
Oh, beautiful. You didn't have to plug
not
that,
to get,
Taste. But Taste has been around.
How many people were really doing journalism and reporting about food in this nerdy way? Pretty nerdy. I love it.
I love it. I got to catch up with John recently in Tucson.
Nice.
And he's got his queer food book coming out.
What is queer food? It's great. It's awesome.
Have you checked it out?
I have. We've been talking about Craig Claiborne. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. I can't wait to have John on the show.
Yeah, great writer.
We all have a relationship with PBS food programming, right? Like we all do. And so was there a PBS show that you kind of enjoyed or leaned into as a kid or even today?
So this question, I think maybe ages me because I I grew up on the Food Network, like 90s later 90s. And I would say that in terms of PBS though, Jacques Pepin and Julia Child, those are the segments I watch now. Just the growth of food television and cooking television has changed. It's changed so much, but I like watching those programs because they remind me of what it should be and could be. It's kind of just it's about the cooking, it's about the food, and it's something that I look to whenever I freak out about messing up on live TV or something. And someone always mentions Julia Child to me, and it's just part of the process, I think, to mess up on live camera.
Definitely, or maybe cut yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Which happens everywhere.
Yeah. Before my Gochugaru salmon video on the NYT cooking channel, I was scaling the fish because I was stressed because it was one of my first shoots, and I kind of nicked myself a little, and so we had to pause for 30 minutes, and I was really self-conscious about that throughout the whole video. But you don't see any of it because it's edited.
They edited out. It's the beauty of the editor.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
I think PBS.
What about you?
I think everyone would have. I mean, for me, I would say, man, I watched a lot in the 80s. I watched Jeffrey Smith, which is problematic. Don't Google that if you don't want to Google that. I think The Cajun Chef probably as a kid, as like a very young kid.
Yeah.
I remember watching The Cajun Chef on PBS and just being enamored. First by his fit. I mean, what a fit. Like a blue work shirt, suspenders, jeans. And just the way his knife skills and his hand skills and the way he would demo Creole cooking, of course, in his amazing Cajun. I guarantee.
Right.
I loved that guy. And I thought that really got me interested in food.
Yeah. In my reporting, I find that a lot of the young chefs now, their style of cooking comes from that origin story of watching PBS. I always think about that, and I like to tell the story of how, like, my generation, we were raised on the Rachel Rays and the Emeril Lagasse's, and I was a huge Tyler Florence fan. That was my representation of being a young food media person as a man. Anyway. You can track media is how you can track influence and how people.
Rachel Ray, I've made that request to her PR since 2017.
Rachel Ray,
I'm making some headway. I had a conversation about a month ago.
That'd be amazing.
I would love to have her in the studio. We could have a very cool conversation.
She was so lovely to me when I was on her show. I was so glad to be on that show before it. She stopped doing it, but she gifted me these garbage bowls. I use them. I use them every day, and I think of her every time, and I brag about it every time because, and I think they cut it out of the segment, but I kind of got a little teary eyed.
Yeah, she gifted you a garbage.
It was really nice. She's
really cool. I've met her a few times,
and she reads the New York Times.
Yeah, she's really cool and an important figure, and she's going to get her Martha documentary moment at some point.
She's really special to me.
And I think that history will prove that she was very important for getting people to cook more when maybe cooking was inaccessible.
Hey, she's the one who taught me the steaming the bratwurst first and then letting it fry with the lid off.
Yeah,
she's the one who taught me that. I should just say that. Yeah,
Rachel.
Credit Rachel Ray.
Next question. TikTok, Instagram Reels, Eric, where are you at right now with this thing that we love, that I love, not you. I'm not speaking for you, but it's a thing.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be honest. I'm not on TikTok at all. I think I would explode or implode if I paid attention to one more media thing because I'm already too much on my phone. But on Instagram, one of my favorite pastimes to rot my brain is just I zoom through the reels, and my reels right now are a lot. It's a lot of just cute animations of small moments in relationships or love, and it's always like a cartoon, two puppies. It's like when my partner, ignores me when I come home, or like whatever. I'm not explaining it well, but I for some reason I'm there in the algorithm, and I'm okay with it because it makes me think of my partner, and it like smooths my brain. And I really like animal videos. Sorry, that's probably not the answer. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you gave me an example of what's on your feed, and that's cool. I think I'm more getting at like as a culture, we're doing TikTok and Reels a lot, and it leaks into food media, obviously.
I see.
Net positive, net negative. Are you indifferent?
Oh my God, I don't know. I think what I want to say is, I hope we get to a place, or get back to a place, where expertise is recognized and valued. And what I mean, I'm not going to go too long because it's a rapid fire, but I think right now I'm just so fatigued by it personally, and I have trouble. I don't know. I think it's, at once I was happy that it democratized this really gate-kept industry.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I also think now there's just so much, and it's hard to drown out some of the noise, and a lot of the people who are actually have the knowledge, who are actually writing the books. You don't end up getting to see them anymore because your feed is flooded with the people who are trying to be who are trying to like enter to make money, and that's the part that it's the dark internet to me. I think it's dark.
It becomes less about the creativity and the art of it, and more about monetization, quick bucks, growth hacks.
Yeah, but at the same time, like people like Eli, I think taking that form and kind of making fun of it, or like using it for good or something, I think that's nice. I want to know. I think if I had a good idea of how I would want to use it, I would enter that conversation. But I don't know if I have time. I barely have time to like brush my teeth.
Barely have time. Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it at that. I like that. Love those sentiments. All right, last one, Eric. Where do you want to be in 5 years with your food media career? Or media career, not just food media, because you cover a wide variety of topics.
Yeah, I think it's hard to. I think I just want to still be working. I would like to be.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, I just want to be
working.
I want to be working. I want my byline to still be appearing, occasionally, regularly. A part of me though, in 5 years, like I'm super tired. I'm really tired. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be. I like when people kind of go away for a while and then come back. Like I think it'd be nice to sort of take a break.
Yeah.
I think I would like that. I think taking a break is totally underrated. I love the way Adele disappears for 4 years and writes, creates another album and comes out every 5 years.
Our friend Samin Nosrat.
Yes, Samin is our Adele. Is food media?
And
Adele.
the food media. She took a nice healthy break after doing the TV show. Pandemic.
And because again we're oversaturated with content, and I think it's nice when people focus on quality. And I want to continue to write quality journalism, quality books, quality stories, and I kind of also want to expand into culture writing. Like I've been playing with it more in my own food columns, but food is culture. But I think I kind of want to just cover other stuff. I
mean, Calvin Trillin is a great example.
Wow, yeah,
he of course started as a civil rights reporter and wrote about cops, and then had his illustrious food writing career, and then went back to writing about music. And I think you obviously could be there in 5 years.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll see.
But if you retire early or you take a break, I won't be able to read your stuff. That's like...
Well, it would be because I'm writing something to be coming out in the future, maybe. I don't know. But I was talking... Yeah. Let's leave it there.
Leave it there. Okay, well, let's wrap the show. Listen, YouTube folks, I'm going to point at the camera because this was the first... I think it went pretty well.
Yeah.
I think we like talked about food writing, and that was important. And you know what? If you're listening to this on the podcast and you're this far, check out the YouTube channel, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, you should comment. Eric, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanal and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com And make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.